Photographers, have you ever wondered why some things you look at don't appear right or don't kind of ring true? So I have a theory for this, and my theory is that the reason why sometimes all we can see are optical illusions is because we live in a simulated reality. It's quite simple when you look at it from a quantum mechanics perspective. If you look at the constraints within our reality, that's why things appear odd, i.e. the moon low on the horizon is bigger than the world itself. But anyway, let's have a discussion about that. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to the latest adventure with the Lance Burkitt encounter, or whatever it's called. Almost forgot what it was called then. It's been a hot sticky week and I'm here again. I'm back in the studio and I'm absolutely roasting. It's that warm in here, honestly. I'm considering calling Bob Geldof. It's that bad. But I'll soldier through. I'll wipe the sweat off my brow. I'll get through it. It's not as if I'm digging a mine or anything arduous as it. It's just a bit bloody warm. But it's frustrating because I don't work well when I'm home. So anyway, welcome back to the latest episode / adventure. So today I'm going to go down a bit of a rabbit hole because, as you know, if you've watched this podcast for the last year, or even if you just stumbled across it and you've read the bio, you'll know that I'm into some quite bizarre and obscure kind of ideas. One of which is that we actually live in a holographic simulation. And when I say holographic simulation, I don't mean like the kind of thing you see on Star Trek with the holosuite where they can manifest characters and interact with them. I mean a much more sophisticated simulation than that. It's that sophisticated we would never know that we're in it. It feels real to us. The air you breathe, the blood you bleed, the table you knock, all feels real. But actually, it's a simulation. And by simulation, I mean a simulation which is way above what we understand simulations to be. So it's not like a real version of Minecraft, if you like. It's even more sophisticated than that would be. And I think it's been proven, probably beyond a doubt, that it's more likely that we live in a simulation than in what you might call a real reality. And there's many reasons why I feel that. Some of it, I just had a feeling. I always had a feeling that, as John Lennon said, nothing is real. And I kind of always thought that. And over the years, I started looking into stuff. David Icke was one of the ones that I looked at probably first, although he wasn't alone in influencing me to look down those rabbit holes. But certainly the simulation theory. And then people like, is he the Rich Darrell, people like that, and Nick Bostrom, with their kind of understanding of how, when you look at our reality, when you look at it in its base form, when you get down to some people call it Planck's constant, which is the smallest measure, other people might call it pixels. When you get down to that level, quantum level, things make sense if you think about them as a simulated experience rather than a real experience. So that's where my kind of figuring came to. But as I was doing that, when I was writing my academic paper, the paper actually which I wrote in 2018 is called The Death of the Mechanical Photograph. And the premise of that was that within 40 years, photography as we know it, i.e. a mechanical thing, would no longer exist because people will have either got sucked into virtual realities and no longer really exist in this reality, or they will have gone back to their own base reality by understanding that we're actually not real, and probably more engaged in things like ayahuasca and those kind of chemicals to exist in more harmony with, I guess, for want of a better word, nature, or the base reality which we came from. So as I was thinking about this and researching this and becoming interested in that, and then realising the mainstream was starting to say, hang on a minute, this could be true. Aligned with that, I read The Fall of Sophia, which is on my bookshelf here somewhere, although, oh, there it is. The Fall of Sophia, which is a book all about the Gnostics, Gnosticism. and their idea of how the universe came to be. I'm not religious. I don't hold any religious values. I don't believe in God. But when you read how the Gnostics say we came to be, and then align that with the idea of a simulated reality, the two actually marry up quite nicely. So while I don't follow a religion, I don't believe in any religious texts or any of that kind of caper. You can if you like. It's entirely up to you. Free will. It's not so much that bit of it that excited me. It was hang on a minute, this sounds like a simulation. And so over the years I've become more and more used to the idea that we don't live in a real reality, not a real how we would perceive it from being born, taught things are real, things are solid. More of it's a sophisticated simulation with limits, and those limits or constraints or boundaries, if you like, just like when you play Minecraft or any of those games, they have limits, boundaries, things you can't go past, things you can't go and do, limits to the game. It's like that for us. So one of those limits for me is visuals, how we perceive things visually. And I wondered for years about all this stuff about optical illusions. Optical illusion. I love that phrase. It's an optical illusion. Which is a kind of a human way, our way of saying, I have fucking no idea what that is or why it does it. And if you look at optical illusions and tie them to science and tie them to theories of the people who call themselves experts, although we know, don't we, experts don't exist in any field, they'll tell you a theory about why they think it does it, but they don't really know. And one of the ones that really stands out for me is our earthly companion, the moon. And from a photography perspective, it's always fascinated me, the moon, because you can't get a picture of it like you want. I mean, there's people out there that do, big telescopes, big lenses, all that do. But just bear with me and I'll tell you why you can't. It's a fascinating thing, isn't it, the moon? We've had it all our lives. It's always been there. Although if you read some older African texts, there's a great theory that the moon didn't used to be there, and it was towed into place sometime in the past, and is used for all sorts of nefarious things by some nefarious entities, which again could possibly tie in with the fall of Sophia and the archonic kind of understanding of what evil, badness is. But that's for another podcast, that's not for this one. But what I wanted to look at today was, we see the sun and the moon in the sky. We see them all the time. We see them travelling across the sky, see them rising and falling. We see all that. But everything you see within those concepts are optical illusions. So the biggest example for me is when the sun or the moon are low on the horizon and they look absolutely massive. And we will have all seen that. We'll have all been driving up the road or walking down the road and looked up and seen the moon or the sun and gone, Christ, look how big that moon is today. Jesus. Then you get your phone out or your camera out, take a picture of it, and it's a dot in the sky. And considering the things that scientists, our scientists, people who think they're better than us, claim to know, they just don't know why it does it. There's loads of versions. I just had a quick refresher. I looked the other day for some reminders as to how the moon, why the moon's kind of like hard to pin down as to why it does what it does in the sky. Can't find the bloody link now. Moon on the horizon. So yeah, so the scientists and the experts that know more than us can't tell you why. They think the moon looks like that or acts like that, and I think it's because it's a constraint of our perception because of the simulated reality we're in. A little bit like if you're playing Minecraft or one of those games, and how something might look to a character in that is different from your perspective to theirs because they're in the game and they have limitations. I think that's what it is for us, and I don't think I think whoever is behind the simulation, whether the Gnostics are right and it's a fall from the original domain and it's a bad copy of that, maybe that's why the thing doesn't work quite right. Maybe that's why things aren't quite right. Because the moon and the sun shouldn't look like that. They just do because the copy's not quite what the original Paradise copy was. But either way, I think the reason we see optical illusions like that is because it's not quite right for our perceptions or our ability to perceive it, whether that's a barrier for us or a barrier for the people who made the reality. Either way, when we look at the moon or the sun in the sky, I believe we're not seeing what they actually are, or even where they actually are. I think we see a limited perception of it because of the limits of our reality. So, and I'm not sure either when we were designed or when we were thought about or when we came to be that whoever it was thought we might make a camera that could allow us to zoom in, zoom out, look at things from a different way. Maybe they didn't consider that, but certainly when you're looking at the rising or setting sun or moon against a cityscape or against even the top of a hill with a tree, the moon looks absolutely massive, and then it rises up in the sky a bit and it doesn't, but it's physically the same size. Science experts can't explain that. They've got all sorts of things they think it might be because refraction, diffraction, perception, but I think it's probably just more simple than that. I think it's probably just more to do with the fact that the reality we reside in, the simulation, hasn't accounted for that, perhaps because it is a bad copy of the original universe, if you like. And I know that might sound a bit out there for a photography podcast, but it's my podcast and I'll talk about it if I fucking want to. So it's quite easy for me to look at optical illusions like that in photography and say, well, given the constraints of our reality, are you surprised that that's all you see? You know, you look at the limitations of the human eye when we're looking at an horizon or we're looking at, I don't know, let's say a train track going away from us, and it starts off this big and the end of the line is that big. But if you look at the slats that go across the middle of it as they're going away, they look like they're getting smaller, but when you measure them, they're actually the same size. It's just a perception limitation on us. So, as a photographer, you're trying to take a picture of something that you've seen. Let's use the moon as an example again. And you can't get the perception that you've seen because there's an optical illusion there. And whether you magnify that with your camera or not might actually add to that misconception or that misunderstanding or that misalignment of it. It may add or subtract from it depending on what lens you're using, where you stood, that kind of stuff. So photography, I think, is kind of a bit battered by optical illusions because we want to represent what we've seen. We want to show what we've seen. We want to give it a good attempt to photograph and represent what we actually saw and felt. And it's difficult when you're faced with optical illusions, which are, for all intents and purposes, none of our making, and we can't do anything about them. We just have to accept them. And there are very few things, aren't there, in life, particularly with, you know, all the gurus there nowadays, that we don't have a definitive answer for why the moon looks massive in the sky, but then it doesn't. Or when the sun looks massive in the sky, or then it doesn't. Or then you point a zoom lens or you point a telescopic lens at the moon or the sun, and it still doesn't look as big as what it looks. Even through magnification, it's still not quite what you expected it to be. And I've done quite a lot of moon gazing, a lot of sun gazing, a lot of star gazing, and just looking at my pictures that I just dragged a few across to talk about optical illusions. I mean, this one here of the sun setting, for example. The sun looks tiny, and it looks 95 million miles away. But on another day, on another space, that sun would look massive on the horizon and look like it's about 30 miles away. And I don't disagree necessarily with some of the conclusions that are made by experts, but I think it's just a simpler answer that it's because we live in a simulation, and the simulation doesn't allow for certain things because of its limits. Speed of light being another one. Speed of light is not a constant in the universe. It's not the fastest thing in the universe. It's just the fastest thing in our reality. It's the fastest we can travel in our constraints in the Minecraft that we live in. That's the limit. And if you get out and go past that, who knows? Another picture of the moon. Now this moon's high up in the sky, and it's photographed against some branches in the foreground. But again, it looks quite small in the sky. But earlier that evening, I didn't have my camera with me, that moon was massive on the horizon as I was coming up the hill towards coming on. And it's the same moon, it's the same size. But optically, why, just because it's got stuff near it, did it look bigger? I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's got stuff near it here, but it doesn't look bigger. But when I was coming up the hill towards home and saw it initially, it looked like it should have filled the frame. But it wouldn't have done. I know it would. If I got my camera out and pointed at it, it would have looked pretty normal because of the illusion. And I have loads of sunset pictures, loads of moon pictures, because I'm a bit of a freak like that. I like to photograph the stuff. But then, you know, you've got like this is the sun with a filter. It's heavily cropped. When you see this is like a 900mm lens. It was an old film lens with a converter onto either the 7D or the 5D. So it wasn't that sharp, but stuck an ND filter on it and allowed me to get some daytime pictures of the sun just over the top of the house across, so the kind of blur you can see at the bottom, that kind of looks a bit like shutter curtain, but it's not. That's just the roof of the house across the way. But the actual picture, the original picture, is kind of like, you know, that's probably about 15-20% of the actual picture, so it's still quite small even with that amount of zoom. But again, on another day, in another space, with another slight deviation of perception, that would have filled the frame visually, but not when you point a camera at it. And I know there'll be some of you out there who've got it sewn up in your mind as to how this works, why it works, and you might be right, I might be wrong, but it just makes more sense to me for it to be the limitations of how our self processes information and how the information in the reality we live in is processed and fed back to us. That makes more sense to me, particularly when you get down to quantum level, than trying to come up with human, man-made reasons for it. I mean, if you just look at the double slit experiment and how not only do particles know when we're watching them, they can go back in time to remedy themselves because we're watching them. I mean, that in itself is just fucking mind-blowing. And if you don't know what I mean by that, just go and research double slit experiment and watch some of that stuff. And it proves to me, I think, that the ether, the thing we live in, the reality we live in, is actually alive, not just a bunch of stuff. It's actually everything's kind of connected. And it makes more sense for me for that to be the case, having seen optical illusions everywhere, for them to be explained by limitation. There's a few pictures here I've got over the years of the sun and the moon behind the clouds, and you know, you see some illusions like that, how it looks like the sun's in front of the cable, and it's just not. It's another optical illusion. And you see this all the time. You see pictures on YouTube and all over the place of people going, "Oh, look, how can the sun be 50 billion miles away when it's in front of this?" And it's just an optical illusion of, because it's brighter than the subject that it's obscuring, or it's that's obscured. It optically looks like it's in front of it when it's not. And again, limitations of the reality we live in, limitations of our perception, limitations of whatever, however it's projected to us, makes it look and feel like something it's not, and it confuses people, and they go, fucking hell. Again, this one, moon up in the sky. This is the same day when it was big on the horizon as I was coming home. But as you can see, compared to the house on our street, it's actually pretty tiny in the sky. But an hour or two before that, as I was coming home with no camera, it was massive on the horizon. Because I think of our optical illusions. Like that, look. Looks like it's in front of those wires because it's so bright, it's much brighter than the wires. Clearly it's not, because it would have been on the street. And it's not. So, optical illusions are everywhere in photography. And I've used these as examples because they're probably the easiest ones to come across and to spot. That's just a double exposure that I did to compare the sun and the moon in terms of size. But I mean, I love taking pictures of the moon because it is a fascinating thing. There are all sorts of theories about how it, I don't believe much of the science about how it came to be. The whack and then the double whack theory, that's bollocks. Personally, I think the Africans are right. It's more likely that it was towed into place than it was always there from the double whack. And again now, so you can see the blood moon in the background with the houses in the foreground, but at this stage it's nowhere near as massive as it was when it was lower on the horizon. Here it's, I don't know, it's probably up at about 20-25 degrees, so it's not low on the horizon. It looks like it's low because of the top of the house there, but that difference between 5 degrees and 25 degrees makes it appear to be tiny rather than massive. And again, I don't want to keep labouring the point, but my understanding of that is it's because optical illusions are everywhere, and the constraints of our reality mean we're limited to what we can see and how we can see it. And I think it makes absolute sense when you look at it like that illusions are a combination of human limitation and reality limitation. If you look at this picture here, look, there's a picture of our back garden, some pegs on the line, and they look tiny. I mean, I'm stood in pretty much the same place taking that picture as I am that. All I've done is zoomed in on the lens, maybe might have repositioned myself a little bit, but there, they look tiny and look like they're running away. But a slight reposition of myself and a zoom with the lens, and it's a different picture thing altogether. And everything we perceive is optically illusory. I mean, humans don't tend to see converging lines and don't seem to perceive the perspective we're looking at things from. Normally we're used to seeing it, but when you put a camera lens on it, the way a lens works, it becomes pretty obvious to us. That picture, when you stood looking at it, doesn't quite look like that to human eye. So again, limitations, adding in more limitations or expansions of a camera, we end up with a close approximation as to what we actually saw, particularly if we're not using things like tilt shift technology to straighten things up. If you're looking at a building and the building's either falling away or coming towards you, tilt shift lens it, correct the parameters and make it look like it looks to the human eye. Quite often it makes the pictures not as sexy or as interesting then, but that's kind of what you have to do to get around that. But perception, understanding, camera limitations, camera expansions will exacerbate most optical illusions you see. And it's a frustration for me in photography, because quite often I just want to show what I've bloody seen, and you can't always do that. So it's difficult. I understand it's difficult for people who aren't into this shit to wrap their heads around about how living in a simulation could have any effect on photography, because we just live in it, we just use it, we just photograph things because we're just used to living like that, aren't we? We are, but when you stop and pay attention to it, you do not start blowing your mind a bit and making sense, and helps you to make some sense. And if you just look around in life, I mean, there are optical illusions everywhere. You know, things like this one on the screen, for example. If you follow the dots blinking around the screen, the background of them looks grey, but if you stare at the dot in the middle, suddenly it goes green. I mean, perception, limitation, it's insane, is what it is. And there's lots of other kind of ways. I can remember that one doing the rounds on the internet, the black dress or gold dress or whatever it was, which is bullshit. But just have a look at some optical illusions and see how your brain, mind, whatever it is, interprets what you're seeing, and you quickly see the limitations of it. I mean, one of my favourite ones, I did this as part of my master's degree. It's a similar thing here. If we stare at that picture there that's on the screen now, if you stare right in the centre at the dot, stare at it for a good 20 or 30 seconds, and then try not to blink if you can help it, but it don't matter if you do. Stare at it for 20 or 30 seconds, and then once you've had a good stare at it, look away. Hopefully it's a white wall, or even just into thin air, look and blink really quickly, and you'll get a colour picture of it. You'll be able to see it as a picture. It's not there, is it? It's not there, but it's ingrained into your consciousness, your brain, your mind, whatever it is, your optical nerves to see it. And that's just some kind of effect of the simulation we're in and the limitations of it, I think. It's your brain going, well, fuck, where did it go? Where's it gone? It's got some memory of it. And I mean, optical illusions are they're brilliant, really, because it keeps you interested. But as a photographer, they're frustrating because you just want to photograph what you've seen, don't you? You just want to see it, picture, take it, done. And the rising moon, the setting sun, all that kind of stuff is difficult. And lenses, how lenses work with our perception, add all manner of bloody stupid, crappy things into perception. You know, those of you that don't know this yet, or you'll be learning as you get into photography, human hands and feet and limbs don't like 35mm lenses. They look 5 times as big as they are. It's a massive frustration if you've got somebody looking to, unless you want that really elongated, ridiculous thing that some people do. But if you've got a person, a subject sat with their legs coming towards you slightly and you shoot at 35mm, their feet and their legs and their shins will be 15 feet long. But they don't really look like that. It's a optical illusion of the limitation of the lens, isn't it? Optical illusion, or it's an effect of the lens, which is great if that's what you want to do, but it frustrates the fuck out of me, mostly. This one here is just a picture of me taking an out of focus picture of the sun just to be creative. But again, the sun in that instance looks like it's just floating on the ground in front of me because of the focus. When it's not, is it? It's actually over the horizon or down by the horizon. I don't have the actual opposite one of that, which is a shame, because I could have, if I can find it, I'll put it on screen. But it's a shame because we could have hooked them up and had a look at why the two were so different. But again, we're back to the little tiny moon up in the sky against the electric pylon. Just tiny. Yet when it's on the horizon, it's massive. That's actually a reflection of our garden through a patio table taken on my phone, just looking down at some juice in a glass. That's all that is. But I could have come up with all sorts of bullshit to tell you what that was, to make you think. But that's literally what it is. It's just a glass with lots of reflections going on. And again, optical illusions, because it looks like this here is the bushes in the garden, and it looks like I'm looking straight at them, but I'm not. I'm looking down at the floor through a table, and that's just what's reflected in that instance. look at it from 3 feet the other way, won't look anything like that. It's just an optical illusion of where I was taking that picture. This is a picture of Jupiter and its moons, taken with a telescope and a 7D, I think. It's the best I could get. I mean, it's a moving target. There's lots of vibrations, even at 4,000th of a second on a DSLR. But what are they? What are they really? In our optical illused reality. I certainly don't believe all the NASA pictures we see of them when they look like illustrations, and I don't believe them because they're quite simply fucking illustrations. But I've got some pretty ropey pictures of them, so there's definitely something there. What they are, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. One thing I will tell you, when you see pictures of stars and planets, and you've got gurus going, oh, look at this, it's not really a solid object, it's not, look at it, it's all sparkly and twinkly. No, mate, it's out of focus. The camera you're using is out of focus. Stop that. Stop gaslighting people. Make the thing in focus, and then you'll see that it's not that. What it is, I don't know, but it's not that. Hate that shit. That's a video I took of the moon going through the sky. Now, you can see again, even with my Pro telescope, it's a bit shaky, and I hadn't got it set up to track it, so I'm tracking it manually. But that telescope is about, it's 5-inch, I think it's about 1100mm zoom equivalent, with a 7D on the end, or it actually might have been the Sony A6000 on it. But either way, that's probably the clearest I've ever got of the moon with the kit I've got. And again, most things are optically elusive, aren't they? I mean, just look at it. I mean, we think that they're bright lights. Science tells us that they're just bits of moon. But sometimes they look like lights. Sometimes they blink like the lights. All the craters are the same depth, no matter how big they are. That doesn't happen here on Earth, does it? I'm sure. So what's underneath the surface here to make it stop doing that? Or again, is that just an optical illusion from Earth? That it looks like they're all the same depth, but they're not. Either way, it's a fascinating thing, our moon. And I do love photographing it and tracking it and seeing what it's doing. But I'm fucked if I really know what it is, what it does, how it got there. But I do certainly know, I think it's one of the moon and the sun in the sky and the lower horizon is probably the biggest indicator to me that photographs can prove that we live in a simulation. And I think some of the photographs that I've seen, and some of the eyeballing that I've seen with my own eyes, prove to me that we live in a simulation. Purely and simply because what we see, we can't photograph the same. In many instances, not just the sun and the moon, things in the sky. I mean, there are lots of lots of things where things don't look right. You know, you can be looking at something 1 minute, you move a centimetre, it moves, it looks like something completely different. We talk about shadows and light and perception and mood. All those things can add into how you perceive something. But for me, it just proves that nothing's really fixed. Everything is kind of, it's like a primordial game where when you think something's fixed, it's not. Because time, date, place, mood, weather, atmosphere can change it quite significantly. So it doesn't do or appear how you thought it would do or appear. And the moon, for me, is one of those dead certs, I think, to prove that that we must live in a simulation, not a solid, immovable, always exactly the same place. I mean, this one here is an optical illusion. Be careful about that cliff, it's called, and if you're looking at that and you're going, oh shit, be careful, man. Then you look at it for a second and you realise it's a reflection. And I mean, easy to trick the mind, isn't it? Easy to trick the mind, and I think that's purely and simply because we're not looking at projections, we're just involved in sophisticated projections. And our consciousness, or whatever it is, doesn't always understand what it's looking at, so it makes assumptions. It's a little bit like that thing you can see where you read a text, you read a full paragraph of text, but then it says read it again, you look at it and all the letters in the wrong place and half of them are missing, but your brain still read it. Then again, it's not photography, but I think that definitely does prove that we're in a simulation. Pre-programmed to some extent. I mean, city in the sky, that kind of stuff's easy, isn't it? And again, this is about perception, where you stood. But I think there's another one as well, isn't it? Is it a load of cattle in a desert and it looks like you think you're looking at the cattle, but you're not, you're actually looking at the shadows. Again, optical illusion. And there are loads of them, loads of optical illusions. I mean, some are dog shit, they're dog shit. But I think photography, I think approaching photography allows us to conceive of things and watch things and look at things in a different way. I think most people just go about their lives not really paying attention. They're not looking at reflections, they're not looking for stories, they're not looking for things, they just exist in NPCs. Whereas photographers tend to be a bit more, oh, I'm just going to stop because I've seen a lovely reflection there, I've seen that and I've seen this. So I think some of us are a bit predisposed to looking for things that most people aren't. And the frustrating thing for me is I can never photograph those optical illusions that I want to photograph. But yet there are optical illusions everywhere. An example being the big moon or the big sun low on the horizon. Limitations to our reality are where it's at for me. And I know I've said that a million times in this episode, but I don't see what else it can be unless there's a great big magnifying glass near the horizon that the sun goes through. Nothing would surprise me. I like the philosophy from NASA. You know what NASA stands for, don't you? Never a straight answer. You know that. We don't know why the moon does that or why the sun does that. Come to that, but just enjoy it. Yeah, in all other walks of life, they're always telling us what the answers are, what the truths are, what we should believe. But in this occasion, I think the reason for that is because to explain it, they would probably have to admit that we live in a simulation. That's the explanation for it, and they can't do that because then you can't control people, can you? It's just really easy to fool people, isn't it, with the old opticals, and you can see that in just how easy it is to fool people with deep fakes or even CGI to some extent. There's a lot of good CGI behind the scenes kind of stuff out there where it's supposed to be a news reporter and then they take all the screens away and it's like, oh my god, it's just a setup. Really easy to fool people, and again I think that's because most of us have real deep limitations to our perceptions. Photographers, musicians, readers, writers, people who think creatively, I think, are a little bit more open to looking past those things. But I think, I don't know, am I lucky or unlucky that this is how I feel? I say I'm lucky because I think that it's a great thing to think, to be able to think outside of educational norms is great. When you're taught all for 10, 15 years of your life that this is this and this is this, don't question it, and then you get a bit older and you go, actually, What about that? And those with all the answers suddenly don't have any answers. I think, I say that I'm lucky to be able to do that. I get frustrated most days with it, but I'd sooner be able to do that than just blindly be going along going, yeah, NASA doesn't know why it does it, but it's creating it. I would sooner know or have a better, more reasonable explanation for it. Not that I think to most people that a simulated reality is a real reason for optical illusions. But I think, going back to what I said at the beginning, if you look at the research from all the bigwigs as to what they think is really going on, the simulated reality is no longer a new thing, no longer a fringe thing, no longer a idiot thing. It's taken seriously. It's investigated seriously. And when you look at the quantum level, when you get down to quantum levelness of it, for me it makes sense that that's what we're looking at. That's why we have visual limitations as humans, whatever we are, as photographers with a camera, which is either an aid or an hindrance to our perceptions because of the limitations of the reality we live in. And that's where it's at for me. And I could probably dig out some more pictures and we can go through some more optical illusions. But again, that one there of quite recent eclipse. I took that from the top of a roof in Leeds city centre a couple of years ago when the eclipse was on. Partial eclipse. But that's only how it looks from our perception, isn't it? From 100 miles further up in the sky, it would look nothing like that. Might not look anything like that at all. It's just a perception that something's passing in front of another object. And it looks pretty close. They look pretty close together, don't they? But are they? Can you tell photographically? Could you tell if you're looking at it through a piece of black welding glass? Would it look like that to you? Limitations of our reality cause us to see things that perhaps aren't really what they appear to be, and certainly aren't happening how we think they're happening. It's just how we are programmed to observe them and how good we can observe them, given our mental, visual, social limitations, I think. So my kind of ethos is I'm going to keep shooting all these things in the hope that one day I'm going to get a picture of an optical illusion that I think is a simulation construct or simulation limitation and get a picture of it so I can show you what the hell I'm talking about. But for now I have to live with the fact that I see things, as you will all see things. I was fascinated as a teenager with magic eye. You've seen those things, haven't you, magic eye, where you stare at them for a minute and then after a few minutes you go, oh my God, there's another picture there. Again, a limitation of the simulation. And I think if you put that out, forget the magic eye, just look out at night or on a bright day or where somewhere it's unfamiliar, just look. Allow yourself to look. You know when you do that thing where you stare and you're not really looking at anything, you're just kind of staring, and then suddenly things look a bit different. Do that when you're out and about looking at reality. See what you start to notice. See if you start to notice things look and feel different to what you've been programmed to think they look, because I think it was photography, I think, that did that to me, that pushed me that way completely, but I'd always felt a little bit like that. I was always a bit of a black sheep, still am. But I always just thought, why? How? Really? That's kind of like how I felt about a lot of things. And it takes a bit of cojones to get to a point where you can go, oh, I'm not buying that bullshit anymore. This is what I think. But photography gives us space to go and investigate, and I think we should investigate with a wide open mind. Wide open to ideas, wide open to suggestions, wide open to experiences. And I think if we do that, we can figure lots of stuff out. Photographers are very special in that regard. We can figure things out. So it'd be interesting to see actually if you guys have had any observations or come to any conclusions yourself about what you think reality is, or whether you disagree and you think it's a solid thing. Great, let's have a debate about it, let's talk about it. Because that's how you find stuff out, and that's how you get to truths, by batting ideas about them, going, actually, you could be right, or actually, I'm wrong. That's what I love about open dialogue and about ideas and about sharing of ideas. For me, right now, I must admit, I feel we live in a simulated reality, a sophisticated, and it goes beyond what we understand, I think, in general as a simulation. I'm not talking about Sims. It's more sophisticated than that. But you don't have to listen. That's just my podcast, my ideas. If yours are different, great, go with them. See what you can come up with. Share some pictures with us all about what you think the reality is. Is it solid? Great, show us some evidence of that. Great. I'd love to be proved right, wrong, or indifferent. So long as we're all making pictures, having fun, and talking, discussing, coming together in communities, and doing what humans should do, converse, be friends, have great dialogue, argue like hell with each other, still be friends at the end of it. The more of that we can do, the better. And if all this does today is make you go, fucking hell, Lancer's a nutter, but I'm going to go and have a look just to see if he's right, I'd be happy with that. That's really, all I want this podcast to do is make you think of it. And if all you do is you think I'm wrong, fucking brilliant. At least you've had a think, haven't you? So that's my kind of haphazard, crappy, thoughts on the fact that I think we live in a simulation and photography is stifled and often falls down because of the limitations of our reality. Going back to the academic paper that started me really getting into this. On a serious note, this is before kind of AI was pushed out to us, and I do have another episode. I don't know which episode it was, one of the early ones, where I talk about 40 years and then 5 years to save photography. I'm not kidding when I say if we're not careful, the reality we live in will enclose on us and photography will be dead because people will either just be wearing virtual headsets or going into immersive rooms and living their life in that reality powered by AI, or I used to think people would be running away from that and trying to get back to nature, but I think it's more likely people will turn to substances because of lack of social standing, and they'll be forced to do things to just exist. And I don't want that to happen, but I think AI particularly has been forced on us so much now as photographers. Even just getting the YouTube channel up and going, everything's so AI based to get people to interact with it. It's hard to not do that. Or automated thumbnails, clickbait titles, just to get people to engage, because we're a couple of years into that way of thinking. It frustrates the goddamn life out of me. But right now I've got to do it to build the channel. So I'm hoping that once we've built a bit, we can get rid of that and become a bit more normal. But please don't run away from photography. Use the mechanical camera. Use that film camera. Use the DSLR. Use the mirrorless. Don't get sucked into virtual everything. Because I said 40 years initially, I revised it after AI was inputted and thrown at us a couple of years ago. We've probably got 3 to 5 years to save photography. And by save photography, I mean to make the point of being a photographer, holding that thing in your hand, doing that work. We've probably got, if we're lucky, 5 years to save that and still be able to do it, earn money from it, sell art, create art, use it as a for your mental health, whatever it is, before we all end up just doing things virtually, either in headsets or with chips in your arm or whatever it's going to fucking be, because that's the way the psychopaths are pushing it. There ain't no friends out there in this world. The Elon Musks of this world, as much as they look great, they're not on your team. They're really not. Anyway, quite deep in then, didn't I? So, sorry about that, but I'm not taking it back. So, yeah, I'll put a link below to the paper I wrote. If you've got nothing better to do and you fancy reading 6,000 words on my understanding of where photography is going and why it's going to disappear, have a read of it. It's published properly. It's a proper academic text. It's published. But I'll put a link down below for you to go and have a read of it. Show and share your optical illusions that you photographed, even if you've done them good, bad or indifferent, or any you've come across, or anything you can suggest that we can have a look at as a team, and we can post pictures below or send them to each other, whatever. Determined to get a bit of better photography of optical illusions somehow. Not quite sure how, with the limitations of that and that and that, but at least we're looking at it, aren't we? And then we might do another one of these in a few months' time when I've got a few more examples to show you. We'll come back and revisit. But just for now, anyway, enough bollocks. Thanks for listening. Have a great evening. Enjoy the sun. Try not to boil to death. And I'll catch you all on the flip side. Cheers.
Get you out my mind. Think about a way to get you out my mind. Think about a way to get you out my mind.